In this video, we're going to go over the pros and cons of selling your house versus keeping it, leasing it out, and becoming a landlord. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Andrew here with the Lake team in Houston, Texas. Welcome back to our channel. We have another great video lined up for you guys today. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you have not already, go ahead and smash that subscribe button down below, hit the bell icon, and give us a thumbs up at the end if you do like this video. The Lake team tries to produce the best real estate content to put out to you guys each and every single week so you can make the most educated decision whenever it comes to buying and selling real estate. With that being said, let's go ahead and move straight into today's topic, which is all about pros and cons of either selling your house or keeping it and becoming a landlord. Now, whatever your reason for selling, the question always comes up is, should I sell my house or should I keep it as a rental property and become a landlord? Now, this question is entirely up to you. Or this answer, should I say. This answer is entirely up to you, but we're gonna go ahead and dive in to the pros and cons of each. So the first thing first, right? Can you qualify for that new house that you are trying to get without selling your house? So that is the first answer that you need to get before you even think any further than this. Because if you are trying to get a new house and you can't qualify without selling your current house first, then that needs, then obviously you can't keep it. But if you can keep the house and keep it as a rental property, and moving forward with the new house, then by all means, we're going to move on and continue the subject, or continue this topic, should I say. So if you can buy a new house without selling your current one, you need to ask yourself, are you landlord material? Not everybody is landlord material, so let's go ahead and figure out what that looks like. Now, can you handle maintenance calls in the middle of the night? Can you handle all the maintenance repairs that the tenant is asking of you to do? Or are you okay with hiring a property management firm to get the job done for you guys so you don't have to worry about anything? So if you plan on taking care of this yourself or managing this property yourself, then obviously it's completely free. You are then the landlord and property manager. If you don't feel comfortable taking over and being a property manager, then you need to hire a firm to go ahead and do that for you. Now, I can't speak on every firm, but I think a good rule of thumb here, it would be around 10% per month of the actual the lease amount or the rent amount. 10% of that would go to the property management firm that you do hire for the job. Again, I can't speak for everybody. Everyone's different. Their rates are different. So if you are exploring that avenue of hiring a property management firm, go ahead and do a quick Google search, and you will be able to find different property management companies to work with, and you'll be able to find out what their rates are. Okay, so pros and cons of leasing it out and becoming a landlord. First, we're going to dive into some pros. So some of the pros are, you have the tax write-offs, right? That's a big one. So you have tax write-off, you have interest payments, you have maintenance cost, depreciation, and your insurance cost. Now here's an interesting one. If you have a pass-through entity such as an LLC or an S Corp, you can write off up to, I believe, 20 to 25% of the net rental amount monthly. Now that could change. Obviously, tax laws are always changing, but I think as of now, you're looking around 20 to 25% of the net rental income that you can write off. And that's only if all income sources after your deductions are less than $175,000 if you are single, or $315,000 if you are married. Obviously, it's best to consult with a CPA on this particular subject when it comes to tax write-offs. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a licensed CPA, so if you want more accurate or better up-to-date, depending on whenever you're watching this video, if you want more up-to-date the tax standards, then it is best to consult with your CPA on what that looks like or what kind of benefits you guys have as a landlord. So another pro, which is a big one for me, is that someone else is paying your mortgage for you. And whenever it comes to someone paying your mortgage for you, you're also building wealth through equity, and that is a fantastic opportunity to keep your property. And like I said, you're building wealth through equity. Someone else is paying your mortgage for you, and if it's cash flowing, then obviously you are in good hands. You're in the green. You're good. So I would suggest, if you can keep a good cash flow without taking a loss every month, then it may be in your best interest to go ahead and lease it out. Speaking of cash flow, what I like to say is your net income after all of your expenses and deductions and your mortgage is paid for. For this particular case, regardless of how you budget, let's just go ahead and say, it's a $2,000 a month rent and your payments on your mortgage are $1,200. That leaves you with $800 before any kind of maintenance or deductions. But let's say you have $800 a month in additional income now because you have it leased out at $2,000 and your payments are only $1,200. Well, that $800 could be useful somewhere else. If you're not, of course you want to budget for, expected expenses in the future. Maybe you want to set aside $200 or $300 of that in a separate account, just in case repairs do come up on this property and you have to make that. You have to make those repairs for the tenant, such as like an HVAC unit or something. But for conversation's sake, let's say you have $800, right? You have $800. That $800 could be put to good use for other debt that you have, right? Let's say, for example, you have an $800 a month car payment. Well, that $800 could now cover your car payment. So that frees up additional income for you guys rather than you have to come up with that $800 every month. And going back to building wealth through the creation of equity, you can certainly use this to your benefit in the future. So if you do lease it out and you are creating wealth through equity because someone else is paying down your mortgage for you, like I said, you could use this to your benefit one day. You can do a cash out refinance, or you can use a home equity line of credit to do whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe you want to go invest in more property. Maybe you want to do some renovations at the house. Whatever that looks like for you, just know that that is an option on the table for whenever you are creating wealth through equity. All right, so we touched on some pros. Now let's touch on some cons of being a landlord and leasing out your property. So the biggest one to me is the lack of liquidity. So real estate is not a liquid asset. Real estate is a physical asset, but if you needed to cash out and get that money out of the house, it is a process. It does take time. So for emergency purposes, it's not the stocks, for example, which you could just sell your stocks, get the money, transfer the money to your personal account and be done with it. And the real estate takes time. It's a process. It has to sell, right? You have to go to contract with the buyer. You have to go to the closing table. So it is a process. So for emergency purposes, if you need money for emergency purposes, then maybe this isn't the best route for you if you don't have an emergency fund saved up. But just know that there is a difference between having liquidity available, such as like if you could sell your stocks versus the house. It's a totally separate or totally different process. So for example, if you wanted to, cash out because you have an emergency, and if you wanted to sell the property, it could be difficult to do with a tenant inside the house. You probably have to find another investor to pick it up. But even then, you probably won't get full market value for it if an investor picks it up, because they have to cash flow as well. They don't want to be negative, so getting full market value at that point in time may not be beneficial to a landlord, or I'm sorry, another investor, so to speak. So you might have to take a hit. Or if you do, best case scenario, you do find an investor to pick it up, or you do find someone that's willing to wait till the tenant's lease expires before they move in. The biggest issue is waiting for that property to sell, right? It could take a few months for that to actually happen, or a few months for that to actually become realized. Those funds become realized into your account. So if it's an emergency, for all intents and purposes, it's probably not the best route. The next con that we have is rising property taxes. Now this is a big one here in the state of Texas, because Texas, we do not have state property tax or state income tax that we do pay the state. We don't have that here. So in lieu of all that, we pay what's called property taxes. Now our property taxes are higher here in Texas than in other states that have state income tax. Let's say, for example, like Louisiana. So rising property taxes can make or break a landlord for sure. And if you are in an area where your property tax rate is 3.8% and your values are starting to appreciate, the values of your home are appreciating substantially over time. Now, if those values are overpass if your property taxes, for example, are going to surpass, what you're getting in from your tenant in regards to rental income, then it could make or break you as a landlord, because now you might be in the negative, right? You don't want to get there. But just understand that property taxes are a big toll here, and when it comes to appreciation, you need to keep an eye out for what that looks like. And regarding property taxes as well, you can actually protest them. However, when you do protest, if you can get the appraisal district to agree with you or to lower your taxes, it's really not going to help all that much. It does help, but it might not help that much. So bear that in mind. It's always worth fighting your property taxes to begin with, but I don't really see it making a substantial amount of difference in how much taxes you're going to end up owing at the end of the year. Next up, we have rising insurance premiums. So, well, here in Houston, I mean, we deal with a lot of flooding. We have, hurricanes, all that craziness, right? So we have windstorm, hurricanes, you have flooding happening. So there's really nothing that's stopping your insurance carriers from increasing your premiums whenever your policy does expire. So bear that in mind too, and it's an additional expense that you're going to have to take on. So just bear that in mind too. That is an additional expense that you're going to have as an investor, as a landlord, that there is nothing stopping your insurance carrier from pushing those rates even further. The next up, we have probably one of the biggest cons here is difficult tenants. Now, this is a landlord's absolute worst nightmare when a tenant refuses to pay their rent, and you can't get them out of the property. You have to go through the whole legal battle, the whole legal process, and then maybe they damage the property when they moved out because they're extremely mad or upset at you. Whatever their case is, but that is an absolute landlord's worst nightmare. We've heard horror stories about people pouring cement down the toilets and just totally destroying the house and all the plumbing. We've heard some extremely rough stories. So that's I'm not going to say that that's going to happen to you guys. I mean, it's one, I wouldn't say 1 in a million, but I mean, it does happen. So just, that's why you have to take your precautions of who you're letting into your house and who you're going to get into a contract with on when it comes to leasing it out. But so the biggest con to me is working with difficult tenants that refuse to pay, and then that could possibly damage or ruin your entire house. All right, so the next con that we have is a decline in values and desirability in the area. Now, this is something that you and your agent should be paying attention to, as the overall trends in a particular area. Is the trend upward? Is the trend downward? Is it stagnant? Is it really just not going to go anywhere, historically speaking? Those types of trends is what you need to pay attention to. If an area is starting to become less desirable, property values are starting to drop. Now, this can actually hinder your ability to sell the property. And so if, for whatever reason, the tenant leaves and it's maybe hard to find another tenant, maybe the rental rates have started dropping because property values have started dropping, it's less desirable. Those kinds of trends you need to pay attention to. And if, ideally, it's ideally in a perfect world, you want to have a rental property where the market is appreciating, right? So if you are in a certain subdivision or a certain part of the Houston area, for example, that has been appreciating historically over time, then that's an area that you want to chase after. Now, if you're stuck in a property, if you're stuck in a house that you think is probably going to go on a downward spiral, it may be best for you to go ahead and cash out now. Right? Those types of trends is what you need to establish with you and your agent, whether it's me or somebody else. But you need to establish those types of trends with your agent and determine when or a good exit strategy would be. And last but not least, we have all of the upkeep and maintenance costs. And so this is a pretty big one. I mean, this could make or break too. This could make or break you as a landlord as well. And if your property is super old and your property has a lot of repairs that have been, or a lot of maintenance has kind of been deferred, you can expect to have a lot of maintenance calls from your tenant. So, but if your property is in overall, good condition or outstanding condition, your HVAC's updated, the roof is good, the foundation's good, the plumbing's good, the electrical's good. If all that stuff is good, then the maintenance that you might be getting called out for, or that your property management firm might be getting called out for, are very small and minuscule. But if you do know that you have issues with your HVAC and the roof and all that, just understand that the tenant could ask you and get some maintenance calls to repair such these items, and some of these items are really, really big expenses to take on. So that about does it for all the cons. But so now we went over both pros and cons of leasing it out. Now you got to weigh your options at this point, right? So if the pros outweigh the cons, then good for you. Now you think you're landlord material, and now you can move forward. And if the cons just outweigh the pros and you're just not willing to take on that type of risk, then obviously it's a better option to go ahead and sell the house now rather than leasing it out. But before you make that decision, let's go ahead and go over some pros and cons of the selling process. So we'll go over some pros first. So the first pro that I have on my list is cashing out on the equity and appreciation that you have in your home now. Now, this can go back to keeping an eye out on the trends in the particular area that you are in, right? If the trend is upward, or if the trend is downward, or if it's stagnant, whatever the case is, if you're selling, you're going to capitalize on the moment of the market today and go ahead and cash out all of your equity, and you'll have a large lump sum, hopefully, in your account that you could do whatever you want with afterwards. But selling and capitalizing on the appreciation that you've built up, I should say, into the property. And another pro we did for cashing out of, selling and appreciating, another pro of that is you can use that money towards a down payment for your next house. So look, maybe you're wanting to upsize a house, right? You're wanting to upsize and get into a bigger property that you may not qualify for with just the minimum down payment. Maybe you have to put maybe you're only qualified up to, let's say, $350,000, but the house you want is $400,000. So if you have the equity in the previous home, now you can come up with the difference of the $50,000, so you can get that $350,000 loan. Keeping in mind that you still have that minimum down payment requirement on the $350,000, but it does allow you some wiggle room so you can get that house that ultimately you've been chasing after. Another cool pro about selling your house and cashing out is you can pay off a lot of existing debt that you guys have. So if you have any credit card debt, you have car debt, you have medical bills, all those bills add up over time, and it's just very stressful to have. But by selling your house and capitalizing on the moment there, hopefully you have a large amount of equity built into the house and that you can use to pay off some of these bills, and so now you can live a less stress-free life. All right, so we talked about the pros, now let's talk about the cons of selling. So one con that I have on my list is it's a process. It doesn't happen right away. Now, selling your house, if this is your first time selling, just think back whenever you bought it. It was a process of when you purchased the house. It took probably about 30 to 45 days, depending if you used cash or if you used financing. Of course, if you use cash, it's going to take less than a week. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to say that you finance. It took 30 to 45 days, and it was a process. You had the appraisal, you had the financing stuff going on, you had a lot going on, and it's a lot of moving parts with buying and selling a house. So just understand it's a process. It doesn't happen right away. Next up as a con is you have to deal with the traditional means of selling, as in showing the property. So you have to deal with showings. You have to keep your house show ready at all times. You have to deal with buyers, all things of that nature. You're going through the traditional means of selling to maybe sell the house for top market, top dollar, top market. So by doing that, you have to pretty much go that direction of the traditional means of selling and letting buyers come in. And another con is keeping your house show ready. That's another challenge in and of itself. And then dealing with buyers and their negotiations of you're taking low ball offers, you're having to counter offers several times. You're dealing with days on the market. You're dealing with the traditional means of selling. Some people don't like that, but I mean it's to each their own. Whatever floats your boat. And quick note, by the way, if you're wanting to sell the property but you don't want to go the traditional means of selling, here at the Lake Team, we do purchase houses. We do invest in the property ourselves. So if you don't want to go the traditional means of selling, reach out to us and we'll see if we can make some numbers work and make it a win-win situation for you and I, and then we can go from there. But if you don't like our numbers and we can't come to an agreement, then it may be best to go ahead and get the traditional route of selling going. So get that paperwork started, and then we can list the house and get you top dollar. All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you have any additional comments or suggestions for topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. If you have any additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. All our information will be on our website. I'll leave a link in the description as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and give us a thumbs up if you like this video, a thumbs down if you hated my face. Whatever your case is, I will appreciate it. And one other thing, whenever you do hit that bell icon, you will be the first to get notified when we release new videos, which the Lake Team does each and every single week. We try our best to produce the best real estate content so you can make the most educated decision when buying and selling real estate. And with that being said, that is all for today. I'm wrapping it up, and I'm Andrew Lake with the Lake Team here in Houston, Texas, and I will see you guys next week.